Alright, y'all, so now I'm going to show you some of these DH through lines, and I'm going to show you a lesson that I believe will represent some of these through lines. So at the Digital Education Hub, we try to make sure all our tutorials cover at least some of these things. So what I'm going to do is cover the bottom three through lines you see here. Intentional use of technology, which our intentional use of technology would be Peardeck. Deep and transformational learning, and then equitable practices and systems. So I'll cover these two first. Like I said, this one will be intentional use of Peardeck. Then I'll show you a lesson that I believe is deep and transformational learning. You guys have learned about the iceberg. This was one idea I came up with last year while teaching that I thought was really deep, touching the iceberg, deep part of the iceberg. But again, I didn't get this approved by all the faculty at the Digital Education Hub, so who knows? So first thing that I did, and let me go back and show you how I actually got this resource. So, I wanted to, and I was teaching math, and I wanted to teach a lesson on data analysis, and I saw that the census and the US government actually had some teaching resources. So I went to this link, I typed in census teaching resources, and I got actual teaching resources from the US Census. And these ones are actually updated than the ones that I used, because just even last year they were still using the 2010 census, but now they have 2020 census and all new lessons. And so I focus on grade 9 through 12 and making data speaks to math. So I'm going to pick this one and show you guys this one. And so they have always a download teacher version, download student version, and the teacher version really goes through an explanation like you can see here. And let's see what the student version looks like. Kind of more of just what the lesson would be. So we can take a look at this here real quick for a little bit. First, it has students try to pick a certain statistic or percentage below here that they want to focus on, either percent in poverty, number of female-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, etc., etc. And then find that statistic for the whole US, then for the state, and then for cities, and then create a infographic based off the data they just collected here. And so an infographic would be like some sort of visual representation of the data, in which they will present to the whole class. Cool. And so here is kind of like a project that you could just that I thought was great, and to me hit this through line of deep and transformational learning, where it was taking a concept from math and I think really applying it to a real world skill. But one thing that I felt like a lot of teachers would potentially complain about or not want to implement this lesson is because they would think that students would not be able to handle like a project like this all by themselves. Like teachers would think, oh, if I give a student a week to do this task, do I really think they would be able to do this task? And that's, I think, a reasonable thing to think about. Like some teachers might have actually implemented a lesson like this and it went super poorly because students weren't able to plan out their time. I think some students would do well on a project like this, but it all has to do with their background. If students are just used to a direct instruction their whole school career, then giving them an independent project like this will be a struggle. So that's where I think Peardeck comes in. And I think the intentional use of Peardeck on a lesson like this can be incredibly helpful. You can break up a lesson like this into slides, and using that the teacher version, you can actually see what instructions they would give you for this lesson, and you can implement it in your Peardeck. So, for example, they talk about in that teacher version maybe showing students how to physically find this data that they would need to find here on the quick facts. So, if I go back here and I click on this link, quick facts, and then pretend I picked the focus of minority-owned businesses, then maybe I could show students a demo on actually how to do that. So I can go to this quick facts, select a fact, go down to businesses, minority-owned. I want to find it for my city of Indianapolis. So I'll type in Indianapolis, and then boom. And sometimes when you do this and show students a demo, you can hit things that they might get confused on. Like, for example, whether I type in Indianapolis or the zip code for Indianapolis, still shows the exact same thing. It doesn't show anything different when you type in the zip code. So students might potentially get confused on something like that. But by doing that demo, we're able to put that out in the open at the very beginning. Let's look at this next slide. It says, with your group, make an infographic. The teacher lesson definitely hits infographic, as that might be a term that's new for students. So you could explain what an infographic is, really going into some infographic examples before having students do something like this, which I think would be very helpful. Another great thing about a Peardeck is you can make the lesson harder. Like, I could see some people complain about this lesson. Oh, what math are students actually doing? Well, like, for that example, minority-owned businesses, maybe you can make students find a percentage, and then students are dividing based off that US Census statistics. So with the Peardeck, you can add more to the lesson than you already had, which is another great feature about it. Great. And so that's connecting to two of our through lines, intentional use